Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just My Stupid Opinion. Oh, we get started now? All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just My Stupid Opinion. I'm Adrian Lloyd, and I'm just giving this a test run. I just want to try out the live streams because I'm hoping to get some going soon with a few different people, but I realize that I should probably give it a test run and know how to set it up before I have a group of people ready to go. So I don't really have anything prepared. I'm just going to be vamping off the top of my head right now. It's actually like, it's 6:15 in the morning right now. My cat woke me up a couple hours ago, and I have not been able to get back to sleep. So I decided to take this for a test run. Anyway, so I guess the main thing I want to talk about is Doug Ford entering the PC leadership race. I find that getting Doug Ford in there really spices things up, but I find that never before have I understood the sentiment in America around Trump than I have now. It's when Trump came in, and after a lot of people what they lived through under Obama, it was easy for people around the world who didn't live in America to look at America and say, wow, Obama does a great job for whatever, Obamacare. But if you don't live under the system, you can't know how well it works. For instance, I live under the Canadian healthcare system, so I know how bad it can be, even though a lot of people, even including people in America, like to hold it up and say, they have universal healthcare. It has a lot of problems. It's not nearly as good a system as people would like it to be. So when Trump came in, for a lot of these people, they felt that the winds of change were in the air. And it's just, this is how I feel right now, because I've lived under Kathleen Wynne for practically, well, I guess she only came in 2013, I believe it was, but pretty much the entire time that I've really taken an interest in Canadian politics, I've been living under her. So when you live under these policies every day and you see the effects they have, for instance, the raise in minimum wage, I see the rise in grocery prices being one of the big ones for me right now. I also see the other problems it causes. For instance, my local grocery store, which is it's owned by Loblaws, which is a big store in Canada for any Americans watching. It's a big grocery store. It's called an independent grocer. But I've been forced to go to Walmart these days in order to afford my groceries. And this is sort of the problem that comes out of it, just for one as example. There's not really anybody hiring, or at least full-time jobs right now are hard to find in Ontario. A lot of part-time work has popped up ever since the minimum wage rise. So we've been living under politicians our whole life, essentially. Obama was supposed to be kind of that outsider that came in, but he turned out just to be another establishment member. And that's what Trump coming in, that's what everybody loved. It mixed everything up, and it looked like a guy who was actually going to finally do something for the people. He was controversial for sure and definitely divisive. But now with Doug Ford entering, this is how I feel, because we have only establishment politicians right now in Canada. There's nobody else but just cookie cutter politicians. The Fords are different. In Canada, we all remember Doug Ford's brother, Rob Ford, and some Americans might, because he was making international headlines a few years ago. Unfortunately, since then, he's actually died from cancer. But when he was the mayor of Toronto, he got a lot of headlines because it started off that he was smoking crack. And after that, just his behavior caused a lot of attention. It was quite funny, even though some of the stuff he said shouldn't have been. It was really funny. One thing is, he was accused by a staffer of, I think he got, if I remember correctly, he was drunk or something, and he asked to lick her box, she said, and he said the allegations were false. I'm trying to remember the exact situation because it's been a few years. But when he was talking to the press, he ends up saying, as for these allegations, I never said that. I would never say that. I'm a happily married man and I have enough to eat at home. Thank you very much. That was Rob Ford. And then after that, and a few other situations, another one, he was drunk at a party, and he made some comment about the waitress, some derogatory comment, and then he makes it, and then he immediately apologizes to her. It was the most Canadian thing ever. And then he gets caught with more crack. And the best thing about this all is he got re-elected. Rob Ford got reelected as Toronto mayor after all that, and it was soon after that it turns out that he got I can't remember what type of cancer it was, but he ended up getting cancer and he couldn't beat it, and he died just a year or two ago, I think. So this is his brother, Doug Ford. Doug Ford also made headlines for some of the things he said, but these are not typical politicians. That's what I like about Doug Ford coming in. Now, I don't want to confuse people to say that I've completely thrown support behind Doug Ford just because he's entered this race. I think actually right now, I think he's going to win. I think he's going to win the leadership. I think he's going to win. And if he goes up against Wynne, he will definitely beat her. So I actually do think he will win the PC leadership. I think he's going to be our next premier in a few months. Just because I see the similarities, both to the sentiment in Canada and the type of person that Doug Ford is. These are all similar to what was going on in America just as the 2016 election was kicking off. So I believe that Doug Ford is going to win it just for that reason. And there's certain things he wants to do. He has a more populist agenda, which is definitely going to sit better with us, like the people, because he's more connected with the people. If you look online right now, there's a lot of people throwing their support behind him. There's a lot of hashtag Ford Nation going around. So it's he's gained all this popularity instantly. And I think he's going to win it because Trump gained that popularity and he held on to it. The polls that were being shown by a lot of news were neglecting a lot of other polls, but even so, his support remained strong from the beginning. Trump supporters supported him from beginning to end, and people piled on as time went on. If we think back to just about a year ago in Canada, it was the federal conservative leadership race, and Kevin O'Leary on that. Kevin O'Leary, similar again to the attitudes of Trump and Doug Ford, ended up gaining popularity instantly. He also was a TV guy, so he had that going for him. But he gained that popularity. Every single poll had him leading by a significant margin, but he ended up dropping out a month before the leadership. But if he didn't, then we would see Kevin O'Leary as head of the Conservative Party right now. And I kind of think, oh man, how badly would he rip apart Trudeau in question period? But this is going to be same for Doug Ford. I think he's going to win it. Now, again, I have no more insight to this than anybody else. I'm just going off what I think is going to happen because it's what I feel in the air and what I see when people talk about Wynne. The NDP aren't really much of a contender, I don't think, in this Ontario provincial election because Andrea Horwath has not really made much of an appearance. Like, she just hasn't been there, really hasn't gotten herself public, hasn't gotten her party public, so nobody really knows much about them except for their core supporters in the province. And as far as I can tell, she's just a cookie cutter version of Kathleen Wynne, because Kathleen Wynne is pretty far left, and the NDP are supposed to be farther left. She seems like a much more farther left candidate than some other NDP members out there, or at least some NDP members in the past. So it'll be down between Kathleen Wynne and the Conservative Party, and whoever wins that. the other reason I think Doug Ford is going to win is because of, well, I've been keeping my ear to the ground a little bit ever since he came in, just keeping an eye on who's saying what about who. And as we look at the other candidates, I got it pulled up here. Who we have is Christine Elliott, and she's another long-term provincial politician. She's ran for the leadership a couple times. She lost out the first time was, which year was that? 2009. She lost out to Tim Hudak, and then she lost out in 2015 to Patrick Brown. So she's going for it for a third time. So she's a lot of experience, but she's another politician. So they don't really have any connection with the rest of us. So I'm okay. Honestly, I can't really say I've heard much of her name beforehand. I've heard it thrown around. I never really made me remember her name or remember who she was significantly. Then we have Caroline Mulroney. Well, a lot of Canadians, we know the name Mulroney because Mulroney was, well, he was before my time, at least before I can remember. But he was one of our conservative prime ministers. And he's probably one of the best known names in conservatism, but you could kind of, I can't speak for Canadian conservatives, but I guess you could kind of consider the Mulroney family in a lot of ways the conservative version of the Trudeau family, just that they're kind of the establishment in there. They're kind of the ones who've been around. They've lived their rich lives. I wouldn't expect Caroline Mulroney to be much different than Trudeau, is what I'm saying. She would think she's very connected and have her ear to the ground with the people, but she wouldn't. As far as I can tell from her, that's kind of the person she is. The other thing is, too, is the people who are really significantly endorsing her are seasoned politicians. I know that Lisa Raitt has been showing a lot of support for Caroline Mulroney. I'm pretty sure it was Mulroney. Was it Christine Elliott? Okay, you know what? I cannot remember actually right now which one it was. But I'm pretty sure it was Mulroney. But I know a lot of other politicians have been throwing their support behind Mulroney. I just can't remember specifically if Lisa Raitt was one of them. So when you have a bunch of establishment politicians who want another big name in politics to come in and run for leadership, it's just the rest of us who live here in our daily lives, it's just like we have no connection to the Mulroney. We just know it from history. A lot of ways you think how she probably has as much connection to the common people as Clinton did in America. It's just they pretend like they do know what the average person wants, but they have no fucking idea. They have no connection to the actual real world and people who live it every day. Then we have Doug Ford, who already in his first speech pretty much echoed the sentiment of Ontarians right now, which is that he wants to cut taxes, put more money back in our pockets. And one that is definitely sitting well with a lot of people is the carbon tax. He said that he's going to say no to a carbon tax. And in fact, his quoted words, I haven't actually heard him say it himself, but the quoted words I've seen is that he said, if Justin Trudeau tries to force a carbon tax, and he says that Ford can't deny it, he says, just watch me. Now, this is going back to a quote, I believe, something to do with Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I'd have to look it up again. I can't remember exactly what it was. But the point is he was going to stand up to our prime minister and say, I'm not going to put this in because this is not what the people want. I don't know. Well, I'm not going to get into it much, but I don't really know about climate change these days. Like, I believe the climate is changing. I have no doubt the climate is changing, but just there's so much confusion just because there's a lot of science that have come out. As people have started telling me, look at some of the things, like some of the more science area, don't just sort of listen to as people, scientists tell you. You can see that there are a lot of graphs that get manipulated. In fact, there's one case going on right now in Vancouver, which I think is about to wrap up unless it did. And it has to do with a climatologist manipulating climate data in order to make our situation look worse than it actually is. Now, again, I've only read the article, so I can't take that as exactly what's going on. I'd have to go look into the case a little bit more, but just at the very least, I'm skeptical that we're at the dangerous position we're at, but it's the doomsday prophecy that's being foretold. But that's all I'm going to say on climate change, because I don't know nearly enough to go too far into it. Not right now, anyway. I'd have to do a lot more research before I wanted to talk about it long form. But the point is, at least where I'm coming from with the carbon tax and a lot of other people, at the very least, the carbon tax, we see it as a useless money grabber. It's not going to protect the environment. It's not really going to encourage other sort of greener, more energy efficient alternatives. It's just going to be a tax that takes our money and puts money in the pocket of the government. We're tired of giving our money to the government. Like, we give so much of it now that we can't even keep, like, we give so much of our money to the government now that it's hard to find some money for ourselves these days. So Doug Ford doesn't want to give up, wants to put the money back in our pocket, and he doesn't want to install a tax that he doesn't think will work. I don't know exactly his position on climate change. I don't know if he's an actual says like climate change is complete hoax, or whether he just thinks it's being manipulated, the data. I'm not sure. But right now, for me, I need to look at the immediate situation. And if we keep going down this path, Ontario's going to be broke if it's not already. All this debt will have happened under the Liberal government, the Ontario Liberal government, because they've been in power since 2003. Ontario's debt is terrible right now. A lot of that is due to Wynne, and she's manipulated the books. She's manipulated the books to make it look like balanced budget when it's not. I don't know how she's getting away with this, but nobody ever wants to press charges. So I think that if Doug Ford does win, he's going to have a lot of pressure put against him. If he actually does win the leadership and goes up against Kathleen Wynne, then I think we're going to see a ramp up of stories against him. Well, I mean, I'm probably saying the obvious. I'm speaking the obvious right now. We're going to see a ramp up of stories. We're going to see a ramp up of criticism. But I actually think we're going to start seeing a few, scandals of some sort that'll come out against them that'll turn out to be false, manipulated scandals, political hits, because I think they're going to see him as a big danger. I originally thought, when I at least first heard the story, that what happened with Patrick Brown was possibly a political hit. I'm not so sure, because there's a lot of people from his hometown in Barrie that are speaking up against him. This is online, so you can't verify exactly how many people in the area think that way, but a lot of the people who use the hashtag Barrie are speaking out, saying that they've known this about Patrick Brown for a while. So I'm starting to believe that there is, I do believe that there is truth to these allegations that are being put against him. The other thing is too, is it's turned out that as we gotten our new interim leader in, Vic Fedeli, I think his name is. I haven't had a chance to actually remember his name. It turns out that Patrick Brown likely inflated the numbers that we had, because they were predicting that Patrick Brown was saying he had 200,000 members. He brought on 200,000 members for the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party. But now they're announcing that this has been manipulated, that he has just overblown the numbers by 70,000, some are saying. 70,000 less than he was predicting. So we could use the PC support. Like, the PC support needs to stay together right now, because we have significantly less numbers than we originally thought. But you're still doing pretty good. If the Progressive Conservative Party is sitting at about, I guess that make it at 130,000 members, then I guess that's still sitting pretty well for the upcoming election. And we'll see, because if Doug Ford manages to bring on more, because that's the one thing he's advertising on his website and everything, is that, we need the support, we need more people. The one thing, though, I'm not 100% on is I'm not sure about people my age exactly. I've seen definitely a few people around my age that are showing support for Doug Ford. And right now, like, I'm not going to I wouldn't throw my support wholeheartedly behind him, but he is the guy I would support right now. He is the one I would support over the other two right now. So we'll see if he can bring on more support. I'm sorry, I was going somewhere with this and I forgot where I was going with it. So we'll see how much support he can bring on, but that is one of his main driving forces on his website right now, is he's asking for more support. Oh, right. We'll see how people my generation think about it, because I've seen people from about, people in about middle age and up to elderly. They're all interested. Probably some people in their mid 30s or so. But when we're talking more the millennials, the younger generation, such as the 18 to about 24 group, like the younger demographic of the millennials, I don't know exactly what they think of Doug Ford. So that's something I want to kind of keep an eye on and see what my generation thinks of it. But as it stands, I hope that he turns out to be the one that wins the upcoming election. Because he's going to throw, just like Trump, he's going to throw a monkey wrench into everything. And that's what I want to see. Right now, we need a monkey wrench thrown into Ontario, because everything is upside down and fucked up. Kathleen Wynne has fucked up our province right now. We were one of the most prosperous provinces, but now we have one of the biggest amounts of debt. A lot of our businesses are leaving right now simply because of the minimum wage hike, but also the extra taxes that she keeps putting on and on and on. They just can't support doing business in Ontario anymore. Government is become a huge part of just the jobs available. The private sector is disappearing. The public sector is dominating. But I don't believe that you can last on the public sector. The public sector relies on government funds. The private sector is what props up the public sector. And if you make the private sector disappear, the public sector just comes crashing down, as far as I can tell anyway. So I'm hoping that Doug Ford wins it, and I'm hoping to see some change in the future under his leadership. I hope so, and it's not just a front that he's putting out. I hope it's not just going to be he gets in office and then turns around and becomes another regular politician. I don't think he would. He doesn't seem like he has that attitude. But thank you for joining me today. This was just a quick test on the live stream. And as long as everything went well, I'm hoping to put together a live stream with a few other people soon. So stay tuned for that, and thank you for joining me today.